Welcome back, everybody, to Crusader Kings 2. Today, I'm here to show off a mod that I've made with the help of sort of Discord and Twitch and some various suggestions here. So, I thought it was kind of unfair that every playthrough I play with Vanilla Congenital Traits mod, and you guys obviously don't get the option to do that because it isn't a publicly available mod anymore. The mod maker took it down saying that it wasn't their best work. So I've basically been using a version from many patches ago that I've been sort of updating myself. But of course I didn't want to re-release that because it's someone else's work. So what I've done is I've basically not really recreated the mod, but I've made a heavily inspired mod by that original Vanilla Congenital Traits mod, completely from scratch. So all the art is from scratch, all the traits are from scratch. I've done a lot of rebalancing as well. That was one of the big things I did going in here. Now, I should say this is a very early alpha version of this mod. There's going to be a lot of changes going forward, especially to the art. That's a bit dodgy, as you'll see when we get in. But there's going to be a lot of changes done, especially to the balancing as well. I need to set up ruler designer ages. Now, for those of you who want to play with the super OP characters, I'll upload a second version of this mod, which is all unlocked. So for those of you using the ruler designer unlocked, for those of you who just want to make god characters, or for those of you who just want to test around with it, I'll upload a secondary version, like I said, where everything is free to pick if you've got the ruler designer DLC. So everything below, if we take a look here, everything below Gladiator is things I've added. I believe it's something like 32 new traits, somewhere like 32, 37, something like that. Anyway, above 30. And it's obviously, as you can see here, heavily inspired by the Vanilla Congenital Traits mod. So if you've ever played with that, or ever watched any of my series, you know exactly where this is going. So we've got traits like Bright, for example. Oh, I should also point out that these numbers here, these are dynamically generated by the game because I haven't defined them. So the game's basically looked at what the stat does, the trait does, and it's kind of come up with an age based on that. I will tidy this up later on. A lot of these are kind of a little bit odd. The game doesn't even know how to deal with certain traits. So, you'll recognize things like Bright, Smart, Astute. I don't think this is how they were named in the original Vanilla Congenital Traits mod. I've sort of given it my own names, and again, I've sort of done some random composite art is probably the nicest way to phrase it, using base game CK2 assets, things like that. So you've got your Prodigy coming back here. Rather than it giving a ridiculous amount of personal combat, it only gives plus 20 rather than plus 50 this time. So unfortunately, the bad news is you can no longer have 50 Marshall at the age of Babby. That I have scaled back on that. Unless you want to. At which point you gotta download the other version with all this shit removed, and you can just go butt wild on it, huh? So we've got things like Bright as well, plus 1 to everything, plus 3 personal combat, Smart, plus 2 to everything, plus 5 personal combat, etc, etc, etc. Then you've got the opposite as well. You've got things like Dim, Foolish, Dense, and Ignorant, which fill in the gaps between Slow and Imbecile in the base game, give you things like -6, -2, -1, whatever. You're probably asking, why do these exist? Well, of course, these can spawn naturally on characters in-game. Your children can be randomly born with these traits in-game. They don't have to have a parent with it. I've adjusted these very much based on the base game values, rather than the values from the Vanilla Congenital Traits mod, because those are a little bit whack. I thought it was a little bit overpowered, to some extent, the amount that you could inherit Prodigy. Again, second version, if you want to play the overpowered one, the sort of more old school one, will be uploaded to Steam. But this is kind of intended to fit nicely alongside the base game. I based it entirely on how Paradox have set up a lot of these traits, and it's sort of hopefully reflected in that. So Prodigy is a direct upgrade from Genius in the sense that it also scales. So it's a scaling upgrade from Genius rather than being super OP compared to Genius compared to the Vanilla Congenital Traits mod. Now, I've also added some other stuff that I felt fit quite a nice niche that isn't in CK2 already. So for those of you who like min-maxing, I like min-maxing. People get annoyed when I do it in series though, so I don't try and do it too often. You can add these other types of traits to characters as well, and again, characters can be randomly born with this. The ones in blue are also inheritable, but it's a much lower chance, because this is kind of a nature versus nurture thing, is how I'm sort of justifying these traits being inheritable anyway. They have a low inheritance chance, but they are more for the min-maxy type. So you get Marshall, -2, Intrigue, -2, Diplomacy, -2, but Stewardship +6 with this one, for example. Then you have Machiavellian, which gives Intrigue +6, but -2 to everything. Tactician gives Marshall +6, -2 to everything. Then same with, Conciliatory for Diplomacy, and Savant for Learning as well. So those are for your crazy min-max character if you want those. But again, if you take these, you also don't have access to things like Prodigy, like Genius, because that would be super OP. But you do get access to some of the other traits, which I'll talk about as we go on to them here. So, again, for your more min-max character, these obviously weren't in Vanilla Congenital Traits mod, but that might interest you. Now, this is an example of a trait that I need to definitely fix the age on, because right now this is free, but it gives quite a powerful bonus, and I thought this was a perfect example of a trait that offers you a playstyle that just isn't in the base game, and that's if you want to play sort of tall tech playthrough. Because right now, the only option for a tall playthrough in CK2, let's be realistic here, is playing a Republic. Outside of, sticking around in Venice, you can't really play tall. You can't boom your tech and defeat people with, superior troop upgrades. It's not really the right word for it, but you get where I'm going with it, right? So I've come up with, you know, things like these traits. Again, they all kind of need rebalancing here. This isn't super, super OP, but when I chuck some age behind it, it will, you know, balance it out quite nicely. So this one, for example, gives you technology spread rate, military tech points, economy tech points, a nice little bonus on that one for those if you do want to play a tech playthrough, which isn't present in CK2, essentially. Things like aberrant as well. This one removes 2 from all your stats, but gives you an absolute personal combat powerhouse. Might be good for a tribal playthrough if you want to join the Wolf Warriors or whatever. Plus 80 personal combat, plus 5 health, 40 age though, and minus 2 to everything, I think is quite nicely balanced. This one would let you become 80 Marshal at the age of Babby if you did want to do that. It's very, very strong. Then, for example, you got things like Exalted, give same faith opinion, personal combat, and piety for more of your zealous, sort of holy warrior type characters. Then you've got, this was suggested by Twitch, I really love these trait ideas. Now, these are not inheritable. And these 2 traits here, preternatural and messianic, can only appear 1 in every 10,000 characters. So these are going to be super, super OP. These are going to be very, very rare. As you can see, it takes 185 age to get these. I might even make it so you can't pick them if you want to, if you're using the rule of donor. I might make these unavailable to pick and just have them spawn in on characters. These are super, super powerful. This is supposed to offer a kind of unique challenge. You know, if you get an enemy realm where a character like this spawns, you are going to be shitting yourself, essentially, especially if they become the ruler of an enemy realm or something like that, which is well within the means of possibility. Granted, the chance of these appearing is incredibly slim. You're looking at, like, I worked out the chance of getting, like, both of these traits and a Prodigy as well, and it was, like, microscopic. We're talking powers and powers and powers of negatives there. We've also got things like Fertile coming back from the Vanilla Congenital traits mod. I have rebalanced it slightly because Fertile in that gives a sex appeal bonus. Doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. They could have a face like a truck after all. So we've given it, I've sort of adjusted it so the fertility is higher at the higher levels, but you don't get that sex appeal. Similarly, you've got the opposite as well. You can be unfruitful, sparse, or barren, which obviously lowers your fertility. I've kind of been fair with the balancing, though, whereby the highest level of Prolific gives you plus 50% fertility, the lowest level of Infertility only gives you a minus 40%. Similarly, Sparse only gives minus 25, whereas Bountiful gives like a plus 35. I tried to be fair with it. You know, I've tried to keep it in the player's favor, whilst also trying to keep it still a little bit of a challenge for those who actually want that. Then you've got things like Appealing and Charm, various levels of course, Ugliness. So you've got like Plain and Unsightly there, both of which are an Attraction opinion hit. Powerful, Upgrade of Strong, might be a little bit OP, but it is 48 age. So if you feel like Powerful and Aberrant, which are 2 traits that aren't mutually exclusive, by the way, like some of these traits, say, for example, we pick Prodigy, for example, gets rid of a lot of those other intellect traits that we had, you know, like Machiavellian or whatever. Those are now completely gone there. What else have we got here that I haven't talked about too much? We've got, you know, Tall, Short, and then a couple of the voices. Now, again, this is only an alpha, so if you want to suggest more traits, more than feel free to absolutely hit me in the comments, hit me in the Discord. Maybe don't leave a Steam Workshop comment, because I don't really check those ever. Because if I go online on Steam, I get like 50 friend requests a minute, so I try and avoid doing that too often. But again, hit me up on Discord, hit me up in the YouTube comments, I'll definitely check those, especially on this video as well, because I feel like your feedback is absolutely going to help shape this mod. But this is something we can keep up to date. You know, this is something that I've essentially got full control over, unlike the Vanilla Congenital traits one, which is the only reason I did it. Just so I could update it from playthrough to playthrough, so that we could update it depending on the mod pack we're using as well. So some of these might not fit into an Elder Kings playthrough, for example, or some of these might not fit into a Game of Thrones playthrough, for example. Which point we can remove them and scale them back, or there might be certain other traits that we think might fit into those that I can just straight up add to this mod pack. And again, we can develop this as we go through, as the CK2 updates, as we get more DLC, that type of thing as well. So I think this is going to be pretty good. It's a foundation. That's what this is right now. It's a foundation for us to build things on in the future. Needs a bit of rebalancing, but as you're watching this video, I'm only going to put this live after this goes up on the workshop. So by the time you're watching this, it's already available for download. Let me know what you think. Of course, if you like it, give it a rate up or a favorite or whatever the hell you do on Steam, just so other people can see it. Because I know a lot of people do miss that original Vanilla Congenital traits mod. And it's not super overcomplicated either. That's the one thing I haven't talked about too much. I have cut out a lot of the... In the Vanilla Congenital traits mod, I always thought it was a little, like, overwhelming amount of traits. It's probably the right way to phrase it. You know, you have 4 different levels of voices, for example. You know, 3 different levels of booming voice, 3 different levels of melodious voice, 3 different levels of silver tongue, then 3 different levels of stutter, and I thought it was just way too much. Now, the thing about this mod, as well, also forgot to mention this, I'm not a very good salesman, this doesn't touch any of the base game traits at all, unlike the Vanilla Congenital traits mod that does affect them somewhat. So strong in Vanilla Congenital traits is actually called capable, and it's actually slightly weaker than strong. It's very confusing. What that also means is, say, for example, you play with the Vanilla Congenital traits and load into, I don't know, Ragnar Lothbrok, or either the bonus, for example. They're what would normally have the strong trait, they actually only have a capable trait, which is slightly worse. Whereas, like I said, for full compatibility, this doesn't actually touch any of the any of the base game traits whatsoever. So this should, in theory, be compatible with any mod collection, any combination of mods you could think of. This should work. So let me know what you think. Again, basis, got some art to do, especially that big old Homer Simpson muscle we've got there for powerful. That definitely needs some changing, I think, huh? And, you know, some of them aren't terrible. I think some of the art's okay. Kind of a squished baby there on Bountiful, though, huh? And you can tell I've sort of combined these from several other different traits. But, hey, fits the art style. You can't argue with that because all the arts come from Paradox, sort of. Thanks, Paradox. Thank you as well for watching. And, of course, shout out to the patrons for making the channel and the series possible and for allowing me to have the time to be able to do things like this as well. Because otherwise, I'd have to work a full-time job so I didn't starve to death. So big shout out to those guys. I think that's it. I'm trying to think. Have I forgotten anything? Nah, I think we're good. See you guys all on a YouTube video somewhere, I guess. I'll see you around. Hey, see you around.